It's hard to believe that New Orleans, the city that cared for got, didn't really care that much about major pro football when it was first introduced locally back in the 1920s. Of course, over time, that would change and result in one of the greatest fan bases any team could ask for. November 2016 will mark 50 years since the Crescent City was awarded its coveted pro franchise. While it's near impossible to talk about every single detail, today we'll take an extended look back at not just Saints history, but the stories going back 4 decades before then evolving from glimpses of the game to the full force effort in getting a franchise based here. Welcome to Fleur-de-lis Football Flashback. One of the great long-lost stories of New Orleans professional football history occurred when an announcement was made January 3, 1926, that 7 days later, the Chicago Bears, featuring head coach George Halas and star running back Red Grange, would make an appearance in New Orleans to play a group of local ex-college all-stars at Heineman Park as part of the Chicago Bears barnstorming tour. This was a practice during the 1920s and early 30s in the NFL, where they would allow their teams to play other NFL or non-NFL teams in exhibition contests as a way to make extra income. The local organizer of the contest was Lester Lautenschlager, who was Tulane's starting quarterback in his senior year of 1925. As soon as his senior season ended, he was named an assistant coach by Tulane's Clark Shaughnessy. However, he was told by Tulane administrators that they didn't want him or anyone connected with the school to be involved with pro football, as they felt at the time the pro game was on the same level as pro wrestling, a pathetic sideshow created as a money grab. Tulane would end up firing Lautenschlager over this contest. Some 5,000 people attended the game, which is well below Heineman Park's estimated capacity at the time of 9,500. The roster for the Southern All-Stars featured a total of only 14 players. That's right, just 14, including Brother Brown of Tulane, Moon Ducote of Auburn, Tommy Ryan of Vanderbilt, and Red Swanson of LSU. A funny story tied into the game is that Lester Lautenschlager was promised $6,000 for his expenses by Charles C. Pyle, the agent of Red Grange, who helped organize the barnstorming tour. The agreement was that Pyle was to put down $3,000 before the game, which he did, but then the other $3,000 had to be put down no later than halftime. When Lautenschlager couldn't find Pyle at the end of the first half, he actually went up into the stands dressed in his football uniform to the press box and told the media there would not be a second half unless Pyle came through with the money. Fortunately, Pyle did so. As for the game itself, the Bears won 14-0. One of their touchdowns was off a blocked punt, which was recovered by Ernie Vick, and then Red Grange would carry the ball in from 7 yards out in the fourth quarter. Grange finished the day with 17 carries for 74 yards. As soon as the game ended, the Bears got on a train and headed straight to San Diego, California for their next exhibition contest. As for Lester Lautenschlager, well, he would go on to practice law for decades in New Orleans, serve as a state representative from 1928 to 32, and then for 23 years was the director of the New Orleans Department of Recreation, which we now call NORD, which was then a voluntary post that paid him $1 per year. The community at the time was very set in their ways and wouldn't embrace a sport whose concept was more foreign than some of the immigrants who now called New Orleans home. However, like a pot of red beans on Monday, sometimes it takes a good long time for something to simmer before it is ready to be enjoyed. Often you hear the stories from the days of segregation of Negro League Baseball's dominance with minority fans for the first half of the 20th century. However, in New Orleans, many modern sports fans may not realize the interesting history of what was the Negro Independent Football League that began in the late 1920s. Two of the more familiar teams were the Scrubs and Brutes, who featured players with nicknames such as Rabbit Lawrence, Cocky DeValier, and Tonky Gibson for the Scrubs, while the Brutes featured Baldy Wilson, Tin Can Bora, and Frog-Leg Tallow. The season ran from September through December, and starting in 1927, a season-ending exhibition contest was established with the annual Times-Picayune Toy and Doll Fund benefit game, where all proceeds went towards poor African-American children's Christmas presents, plus the winning team won a silver football trophy. Some seasons, this game also served as the tiebreaker for deciding the league champion. Most league games were played at either Heineman Park, later called Pelican Stadium, or Xavier University Stadium. The earliest detailed record of a championship game was 1929, when the Scrubs defeated the Southsiders 7-6 on a touchdown run by Mike Morris. The Southsiders' only touchdown was on a 50-yard interception run back by Ernest Wright. The Scrubs went on to win 3 straight city championships, including 1931, where they were unscored upon for the entire season under head coach Ed Brazil. The Elks would be named city champions in 1932, followed by the Brutes in 33 and 34. The 35 title went to the TC Pirates. Those initials stood for Training Center of the Army Service Forces. The deciding contest was versus the Brutes in a 7-2 victory for those Pirates, where the Brutes had a safety via a blocked punt by lineman Lewis Rousen on Pirates punter Jannard Walker. The winning Pirates points came on a 75-yard touchdown pass from rookie Walker to Howard Gay. A 3-year domination would occur from 1936 to 38 by the Trojans, where the club went undefeated for that entire stretch under head coach Harry Riley in 36 and 37 and Al Johnson in 38. 1938 also marked the first time a postseason game was scheduled, called the Chocolate Bowl, which lasted into the 1940s. This contest replaced the Toy and Doll Fund matchup as a potential championship tiebreaker game. Otherwise, it was played as an exhibition contest. In 1939, an All-Star game was created at season's end, where that year's champion would play the All-Stars of the other teams, and this contest would be called the Coffee Bowl. The 1939 season featured a significant milestone, as for the first time a local team, in this case the TC Pirates, played an out-of-state team in the Chicago Brown Bombers at Pelican Stadium in a 34-19 Chicago win. Some 1,000 people attended at 95 cents each. As a reflection of the time, the promotion stated that a large section of the stadium would be reserved for white spectators. One of the more interesting storylines of the league belonged to Al Parker, who was a player for the Elks in the early 30s and later a player head coach of the Southsiders in the late 30s. He apparently once booted a punt 70 yards in a game, in addition to being an accomplished fullback. The 1939 title belonged to the Brutes under head coach Emile Labatt, with the Trojans winning it all in 1940, 44, and 47. The Hawks were champions in 1941, the Scrubs in 42 and 43. The Camp Plauché squad won the 1945 title, with the Southsiders winning it all in 1946, and the Elks dominating the title scene from 1948 through 50. And the Brutes wound up regaining the title in 1951. Often during the league's history, they would also play exhibition contests versus the main Baton Rouge powerhouse called the Regal Patriots, as well as a squad called the Bogalusa 11. As the 1950s progressed, the league would gradually fade away as the times were changing, especially with dwindling local sports attendance, primarily with the Pelicans baseball team, and in addition to changes in the social landscape. It was definitely a different era of sports, but hopefully one that won't be completely forgotten. A slight glimmer of light came in 1934 when it was thought New Orleans could actually be part of a national football organization. S.A. Godman of Memphis, Tennessee, announced the formation of the American Football League, no relation to the same league of 1960, in which New Orleans would be one of the 11 franchise cities. In fact, it was so sure New Orleans would get a franchise, they even announced that the Dixie Flyer, Bucky Moore, who was a halfback at Loyola University of New Orleans in the latter half of the 1920s, would become the team's head coach. However, because of organizational issues with the league office in Memphis, the New Orleans franchise does not pan out, and Bucky Moore became head coach of a Louisville franchise. Back in mid-October of 1938, Pittsburgh Steelers owner Art Rooney, whose team was called the Pirates until 1940, got NFL permission to move the team's upcoming home game versus the Cleveland Rams to the end of the season, which was early December, and relocate the contest, all because of low attendance. After negotiations with Chattanooga, Tennessee failed, a friend recommended he speak with New Orleans officials on the availability of City Park Stadium. On November 27th, Pirates business manager John Mayer arrived in New Orleans to present the check to secure the facility. Outside of the local newspapers, Rooney had a tough time promoting the game, which he stated was moved because of an extended snowstorm. One case in point was when he spoke to New Orleans Mayor Robert Maestri. The mayor thought Pittsburgh was a team that was going to play LSU. But nonetheless, word got out, and the following Sunday, December 4th at 2:15 p.m., some 7,500 people paid between $1 and $2.50 to watch Pittsburgh, coached by Johnny Blood McNally, and the Cleveland Rams, coached by Art Lewis, in the very first NFL regular season game played in the southern United States. The Rams dominated most of the contest, starting with a 48-yard touchdown pass from left halfback Bob Snyder to end Jim Benton in the first quarter. In the third quarter, Rams tackle Jack Robinson blocked a Byron Whizzer White punt, which led to another Snyder to Benton touchdown pass, this time from 6 yards out. Pittsburgh prevented the shutout thanks to a Whizzer White 46-yard run, which led to a touchdown pass from White to end Wilbur Sortet on the game's last play. The final score, Rams 13, Pittsburgh 7. In the fumble-free contest, White averaged 6 yards per carry, and Pittsburgh threw 6 interceptions, 3 caught by Rams defensive back Jules Alphonse. plus had 40 yards in penalties compared to the Rams' 5. Rams' Bob Snyder averaged an incredible 49 yards per punt in the contest. Pittsburgh finished the season 2-9, the Rams 4-7. The NFL used only 4 officials in the game. The head referee, Tommy Hewitt, was brought in by the league, and in a common money-saving practice in those days with neutral site games, the remaining 3 were local men. Umpire Leo Ernst from Warren Eastern High School, linesman W.J. Dutch Luksinger from Tulane and longtime Fort Jay High School coach, and Bill Walmsley from Rugby Academy. This game's end also marked a brief football retirement for Whizzer White, as he would temporarily leave the NFL to study under a Rhodes Scholarship at Oxford University and later became a United States Supreme Court Justice. While Major Pro Football wouldn't return to the Crescent City for another 11 years and wouldn't become a yearly staple until the Saints in 1967, it's good to know that when you consider how big the National Football League would become, the first game that counted in the southern U.S. was played right here in New Orleans. And then along came 1939. The Southern Baseball Association, of which the New Orleans Pelicans was a longtime member, has a meeting in Memphis, Tennessee, where some of its teams agree to field franchises in a Southern Pro Football League. New Orleans is represented at the meeting by W.B. Wisdom and Seymour Weiss. However, the New Orleans franchise winds up not panning out of concerns by Wisdom and Weiss as to whether or not the pro football franchise would be able to sustain itself financially. Rumors began circulating in September 1944 that New Orleans may get a franchise in the inaugural All-American Football Conference, which originally was scheduled to start in the fall of 45, but wound up not doing so till 46 over a concern of lack of quality players that were out during World War II military duty. Then on December 15, 1945, the item newspaper's Hap Glaude reported an authoritative New York source stated a group of local businessmen had put down $20,000 for the 10th franchise in the league after a meeting with Commissioner Jim Crowley. City Park Stadium would be their home venue, and most games would be played on Saturday nights. Plus, the group was already searching for a big-time coach, according to Glaude's article. About a month later, the news changed to where 2 local groups were actually interested in the franchise and would be willing to play games in the middle of the week as not to conflict with high school or college action. Further changing news came when the league announced later in January of 46 it was only going to have 8 teams and New Orleans wouldn't be included. Faint hope resurfaced in December of 46 when New Orleans was reported to be one of a handful of cities to be the new location of the Miami Seahawks, but that franchise wound up being purchased by a businessman in Baltimore, where it became the Colts. Another attempt at NFL action in the Crescent City came about in an exhibition contest, which was announced on May 21, 1949 by local group Sports Incorporated, led by President Dave Gertler, Director Herbert Palais, and publicity man Scoop Kennedy. The contest was played at City Park Stadium on September 3rd between the Philadelphia Eagles, the 1948 NFL champions, and the Detroit Lions. The Eagles were coached by Earl Greasy Neal and featured running back Steve Van Buren of LSU fame, along with end Pete Fijos and all-star center linebacker Chuck Bednarik. The Lions were coached by Bo McMillan and featured star running back Bullet Bill Dudley. On game day, the crowd was only 12,000 people. Some blamed it on inclement weather as well as the Labor Day holiday. The Eagles won 45-14. Steve Van Buren wound up with 130 rushing yards on the day. An unreported story at the time that wrapped around the game dealt with the Lions' 3 African-American players, Bob Mann, Mel Grooms, and Wally Triplett. Coach McMillan met with the players and informed them that not only could they not stay at the team hotel, but that the city had a prohibition on interracial sporting events, and that McMillan didn't think he should break it. Mann would later say in an interview, "If I can't play in the game, I don't want to sit on the bench." He had a chance to be a hero, step up to the plate, but he didn't do it. The game itself was not a huge windfall for the promoters, and their hope to make pro football exhibition games an annual event in New Orleans had to be shelved. On November 23, 1955, the San Diego Union newspaper reports that Redskins owner George Preston Marshall predicts Sugar Bowl Stadium, or Tulane Stadium, will eventually become the home of the annual NFL Championship game and be played on January 1st, replacing the Sugar Bowl contest, based on the feeling it was getting cull, or less quality college teams due to other bowl games having conference tie-ins taking better teams, and the Midwinter Sports Association, the Sugar Bowl organizers, would lean towards the NFL out of concern their sponsors would leave over the subpar college teams. At the following NFL winter meetings, the idea of this neutral site championship game in New Orleans or any other city is not discussed. And yet another brief glimmer of possible exhibition football returning to New Orleans came on June 10th, 1956, when Detroit Lions president Edwin Anderson and general manager Nick Kerbaway announced they would like to play a preseason game in New Orleans for 1957 against the Redskins, but only if it can be played at Tulane Stadium. Tulane's board votes against it over some members not wanting the pro venue in their facility. Then a story develops on February 25, 1957, that New Orleans is a possible location for a franchise in the upstart United States Football League, no relation to the 1980s league of the same name. Mayor Chet Morrison sends a telegram to league president Millard T. Lang, stating in part, quote, "It is my opinion that our metropolitan area could support a first-class professional football program. Our City Park Stadium is flood-lighted for night play and seating capacity of approximately 30,000. Sugar Bowl Stadium, which seats 85,000, does not permit Sunday play." But you can guess it was the same old story. This potential league winds up not panning out. 1959 was a very disappointing year for many New Orleans sports fans as the baseball Pelicans, the city's minor league club for 77 seasons, elected to cease operations. Stemming from the shutdown came a new direction as Jack DeFee, the Pelicans' last front office general manager, decided to start Louisiana Professional Sports Incorporated, formerly known as New Orleans Professional Sports Incorporated. DeFee, along with Jack Salino and Norville Alexander, came together and decided to experiment with hosting the first of what would hopefully be several major pro football exhibition games in the city as a way to gauge the chances of landing a pro franchise one day. They held a formal announcement at the Prince Regal Room on May 4th, 1960, stating the first contest would be held on August 13th that year at City Park Stadium for an 8 p.m. kickoff. The Pittsburgh Steelers, led by coach Buddy Parker and quarterback Bobby Lane, took on the Green Bay Packers, led by second-year head coach Vince Lombardi. After a 6-6 halftime score, Green Bay broke the game open in the third quarter with an 80-yard drive led by quarterback Lamar McCann, capped off by a 22-yard touchdown pass to Tulane's Max McGee to make it 13-6. 20-6 later in the contest, as Paul Hornung would throw a touchdown pass to Boyd Dowler, Pittsburgh would close out the scoring with a John Henry Johnson rush. Final score, Steelers losing to Green Bay 20-13. Some 16,500 fans attended, a figure that Mr. DeFee later told the papers was a bit disappointing, hoping for at least 20,000. About a year later, on August 8, 1961, the promoters told the Times-Picayune's Bob Rossler that they gave up trying to stage a game for that season only because of pressure by an African-American organization over the then segregated seating arrangements of City Park Stadium. A situation would be rectified some months later. On August 18, 1962, the Boston Patriots, featuring Tulane offensive lineman Tony Sardisco, and the Houston Oilers, featuring the great running back Billy Cannon of LSU and Heisman Trophy fame, met at City Park Stadium before an overflow crowd of 31,000 people. Houston would win the contest 20-10. It was the largest crowd to watch an AFL preseason game at that time. One day after the contest, Times-Picayune writer Bill Keefe stated that the citizens needed to rally for a new stadium in order to support a future team. At this point, Dave Dixon gradually took over the lead from Jack DeFee in getting a team here, and Dixon, who earlier that year spent $25,000 on an application fee for an AFL expansion franchise, almost got the Raiders to move here, but two of his minority investors in buying the team backed out on him. Later, the Dallas Texans considered moving here, but Tulane Stadium didn't want to lift its ban on alcohol sales, in addition to being reluctant to open its stadium on Sundays. However, in March of 1963, Dixon finally got permission from the Tulane board to play a professional football game at their stadium, largely thanks to backing from his friend and board member Darwin Fenner. With Dave Dixon now given the green light to use Tulane Stadium, he formally announced on March 30th of 1963 that indeed a special version of the pro game was coming to New Orleans. Over 51,000 fans turned out at the first ever integrated seating event at Tulane Stadium on September 7, 1963 for a very rare NFL doubleheader exhibition contest. The Cowboys, led by head coach Tom Landry and quarterbacks Don Meredith and Eddie LeBaron, beat the Lions, head coached by George Wilson and quarterbacked by Milt Plum, in the opener 27-17, with all of Dallas's touchdowns being scored by little-known running back Amos Marsh. But most fans present likely remember the more than 2.5-inch rainstorm that started with 8 minutes left in the game and lasted some 45 minutes. The second contest between the Bears and Colts was delayed by 50 minutes to clear water from the sidelines. The Bears, led by New Orleans natives Richie Pettibone and Rosie Taylor, won the contest 14-7. One of the biggest complaints that night was charging $5 a ticket for end zone seats. The second game didn't end until 12:05 a.m. Sunday morning, which technically meant it was the first time Sunday football was played at Tulane Stadium. August 8, 1964, some 60,000-plus fans filled Tulane Stadium to watch the St. Louis Cardinals, featuring former LSU star Jerry Stovall, take on another LSU star in Jim Taylor and the Green Bay Packers. Cardinals upset the Packers 20-7, ending Green Bay's 24-game preseason winning streak versus NFL teams. Local promoter Dave Dixon was so excited he immediately sent telegrams to all NFL and AFL owners to urge expansion at their next meetings. He also bought several thousand bus passes leading into the game so that fans wouldn't have to worry about all the parking issues around Tulane Stadium. Then on September 5 of '64, some 38,000 fans watched the Bears beat the Cowboys 21-6, with New Orleans natives Richie Pettibone and Rosie Taylor each getting an interception in the contest, plus future Saint Dave Witzel ran back a blocked field goal 56 yards for a touchdown. After the game, it was announced New Orleans would host the January 1965 AFL All-Star Game, an event that would turn out to be more monumental than many imagined. Saturday, January 9, 1965, the first of several anticipated, well-publicized days leading into Tulane Stadium hosting the American Football League All-Star Game on January 16th. A game whose proceeds were going to the New Orleans Police Foundation. Players for both the East and West squads were arriving at the Roosevelt Hotel and the Fontainebleau in potentially the biggest football game in the city's brief pro history, a game that could easily clinch an expansion team with the huge attendance. Then the news broke early Monday morning, January 11th. 21 African-American players refused to play in the game after claims of being denied taxicab service and entrance into French Quarter clubs. Here's former San Diego defensive lineman Earl Faison.
So we decided we're going to visit the French Quarter, 5 or 6 black guys. We walked up to a club door and they would get quiet, indicating, no, you don't come in. So we walked past 4 or 5 different clubs, couldn't get access to any of them. One guy yelled out, you so-and-so and so's get off the street. John F. Kennedy is not playing in here tonight. We walk up to that next club. This little guy standing there pulls out a gun. You are not coming in here. We recoil, jump back. Ernie Ladd jumps forward. The guy puts the gun at Ernie Ladd's nose. I will pull the trigger. I did not feel that it was a brave thing to do. I did not think about the social value involved in it for later years. None of that entered into my mind. My personal reaction was that as a black man, I cannot go through this indignity and play a game here.
And more on the story from former Chargers tackle Ron Mix.
But the second day we were there, we got on the bus, and the bus was like third empty. Whoever was our coach said, "Where is everybody?" And somebody said, "None of the black players are here. They're all in a meeting. They may not play in the game." And so I got off the bus and went to the meeting. And I remember they were all in the room, and I'm thinking that I wanted them to be liked, and I didn't want them to do anything that would cause them to be disliked. And I think, well, the best thing to do is if we stayed and played and called attention to what is going on here, then their teammates, you see, would like them. But I didn't see the bigger picture, importance of taking a stand. But they told me what had happened. I said, well, if you're not going to do that, he said, I'll join the boycott with you.
The African-American players promptly contacted AFL Commissioner Joe Foss in Chicago, to which Foss backed the players and told them the game would be moved to another location, which eventually was Houston. Local promoter Dave Dixon had a sit-down meeting with the players immediately after he heard about the situation, but his words were of no avail. Buddy Diliberto, longtime newspaper and later television and radio sportscaster, spoke with promoter Dave Dixon during that pivotal Sunday in room 990 of the Roosevelt Hotel, where Dixon told him, quote, "We'll blow pro football if they walk out," close quote. One day later, Dixon released a statement which included, quote, "To accept the actions of Sunday as a death warrant to our effort is, in effect, to accept defeat of New Orleans, which we will not do," close quote. In fact, more and more he started promoting the idea of a dome stadium for the future team in a building he called the Superdome, a project he thought would cost some $30 million. Later that year, on August 14th, over 75,000 fans assisted Dixon's recharge for pro football as the Colts beat the Cardinals 22-10. The crowd was the largest to attend a pro sporting event in the southern United States at that time. In fact, the crowd at the game was so large, all of the Tulane Stadium vendors ran out of soft drinks at halftime. But the work was definitely not over yet for Dave Dixon and his group, as 1966 would turn out to be the pivotal year for New Orleans pro football future. First, on August the 6th, The Lions came to town to play the Vikings at Tulane Stadium in another exhibition contest that finished in a 6-6 tie. Some 38,229 people attended the game. Some felt another 20,000 would have showed up, but rain earlier in the day may have scared many of those folks off. Then heading into the second contest between the Colts and the Eagles 7 days later, reports began to surface that New Orleans may end up getting an AFL expansion team instead of an NFL. Concern being that if it was an AFL team, then voters would turn down the statewide election on November 8th to build a new stadium based on the aftermath following the January 1965 AFL All-Star Game. In addition, an AFL team in New Orleans, at least until the full league merger, may not be supported well because of the same previously described fallout. 1 day later it was reported that the NFL would expand in 67 and the AFL in 68, easing some local fans. On August 13th, some 41,352 fans attended that Colts-Eagles preseason contest, with the Colts winning that contest 31-17. And then came September 8th, 1966. New York U.S. Representative Emanuel Seller, chairman of the Congress Antitrust Subcommittee, rejected the NFL's exemption request that would have allowed it and the AFL to merge without being classified as a monopoly. Seller told Commissioner Rozelle to go ahead with the merger since at the time no lawsuit had been filed against it. That all changed 1 day later, September 9th. A group called Chicago Football Associates, led by stockbroker Robert Nussbaum, filed a federal lawsuit against the planned merger for some $12 million, claiming his group was denied an AFL expansion team as a result of the intended merger. By September 16th, Dave Dixon further solidified the city's chances of landing a pro franchise via one of his football partners named David Kleck. Mr. Kleck had several Washington, D.C. connections, and Dixon realized that if members of the Louisiana congressional delegation could help the NFL by getting a limited antitrust exemption, hence get the full merger to occur, then Dixon's dream of locally based pro football would be realized. Louisiana U.S. Senator Russell Long met with Commissioner Rozelle to get the process going. On October 14th, reports surfaced that the NFL-AFL merger may not occur over issues of how exempt the potential merged league should be. Congressman Seller said he wanted to explore the situation as deeply as possible before agreeing to anything in committee hearings. As a result, the House bill on the matter stalled. Commissioner Rozelle was considering calling off the merger if the issue didn't pass Congress by the time the session ended about a week and a half later. This potentially would have also put on hold New Orleans expansion franchise. 4 days later, a sudden turn of events developed as Russell Long and Hale Boggs got around Seller's stalling and met with the Senate Finance Committee and the House Ways and Means Committee, and both groups approved their amendment of allowing for the limited antitrust exemption, which was attached to a non-related bill which eliminated the 7% investment credit tax. The bill passed both houses of Congress. 1 day later, Congressman Seller called this, quote, a shameful thing, unquote. One interesting footnote from this famous end around by Long and Boggs. Just prior to the measure being voted on, Pete Rozelle was in the hallways of Congress waiting for the bill to be approved when Boggs approached him and stated in question form that New Orleans would get the next franchise if the bill passed. Rozelle replied that he would definitely consider it. Boggs got so angry that he was going back into the House chambers to cancel the vote when Rozelle grabbed him by the shoulder and stated, quote, you got it, close quote. The bill was officially signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson on November 8, 1966. Then on Tuesday, October 25, 1966, Pete Rozelle met with Tulane Stadium officials and received an okay to host pro football in their stadium until a new facility could be constructed. November 1, 1966, the Times-Picayune front page headline stated, quote, New Orleans to be given NFL franchise, close quote. Here's some of that audio from Commissioner Pete Rozelle at the formal presentation at the Pontchartrain Hotel.
Professional football has voted a franchise to the state of Louisiana, city of New Orleans.
A week later, on November the 8th, statewide voters approved Constitutional Amendment Number 10, which would get the ball rolling for the eventual building of the Louisiana Superdome. Many names were thrown about as to who would be the majority owner of the new professional franchise in New Orleans. One of the leading names was Louis Russell Sr. In an interview he did with Wayne Mack in the early 90s, he stated that he was promised the opportunity to buy the team by U.S. Senator Russell Long, a conversation that Long said did not happen. Eventually, the decision was made on December 15, 1966. After several meetings, an announcement was made at 4:20 p.m. by Commissioner Pete Rozelle, awarding the franchise to John Mecum Jr. Here's some audio from that announcement.
We are announcing, after considerable deliberation and a most difficult decision, the franchise award to the new ownership. We, all of us in the National Football League, myself, particularly the committee that came down and interviewed the prospective applicants, we all felt extremely flattered at the high caliber of individuals who were interested in having the New Orleans franchise. We have unanimously approved the new ownership structure for the New Orleans franchise. And the majority owner of the franchise will be Mr. John Meekum, Jr. of Houston, Texas.
Just 1 week after John Meekum was named majority owner of the Saints, Vic Schwenk is named Director of Player Personnel. He is the first official front office hire by the club. Then on January 9, 1967, New Orleans' new NFL franchise is officially nicknamed the Saints. The name was inspired by local promoter Dave Dixon's love for the song When the Saints Go Marching In.
Definitely. I tell you why. Simply because it's a great ad that would be working for the pro club every day of the year. You know, 100 times a night in the French Quarter, you have When the Saints Go Marching In.
I was sitting in a little cafe in Paris with my wife, and there was a little jazz combo in there, and they started playing When the Saints Go Marching In. I looked at my wife and said, my goodness, what a perfect name for the New Orleans franchise football team we're going to get someday. Archbishop Philip Haddon, brand new in town, hadn't been there 2 weeks. And to my still embarrassment, when he walked by the table, I reached out and stopped him and grabbed him with my arm, and I immediately got up and apologized, and I said, Archbishop, here's the thing. I want you to tell me whether you think it would be sacrilegious to have the Saints as a name for the football team. He said, no, indeed. He says it would be a perfect name, and he says, besides, I have this terrible feeling that somehow we're going to need all the extra help we can get.
Then on January 27th, Tom Fears is named the first ever Saints head coach, and also he happened to be the first ever NFL head coach of Hispanic descent. Fears had been an assistant with the Packers and Falcons and earned Hall of Fame credentials as a wide receiver with the Rams in the 1950s.
I want them to look tough. This is a tough game. It's a violent game. It's a game of blocking offensively. It's a game of tackling on defense. And as long as they're tough and do their job, we'll show well. And that's what the people of New Orleans expect from us.
Owner John Meekum Jr. also assigns Larry Carl, formerly of the Cowboys, as executive assistant to the Saints Organizing Committee, a de facto form of the term general manager. 2 days later, the Saints signed their first ever player to a contract, kicker Paige Cothran of Ole Miss. Then on February 10th of 1967, the expansion draft is held for the Saints, where they select 3 unprotected players from 14 NFL teams. 28 of those 42 players selected would make the Saints' regular season roster. March 6 of 67, the Saints trade away their first selection in the upcoming 67 draft, along with center Bill Curry, who they got from Green Bay in the expansion draft, in return for Colts quarterback Gary Quazzo. 2 days later, the first season ticket drive launched, resulting in 20,000 sold on the first day. A grand total of 33,400 were sold before the first preseason home game in early September of 67. Tickets ranged from $1 to $6. On March 14th of 67, the first ever NFL-AFL combined draft is held, where the Saints, as an expansion team, got a selection at the beginning and end of each of the 17 rounds. The Saints' first ever selection was Alabama fullback Les Kelly, who would later be converted to linebacker.
You were put out there and it seemed like expected to know everything that there was to know about playing linebacker, and I wasn't. I didn't know.
13 of those rookie draft choices would wind up making the Saints' regular season roster. On July 1st of 67, rookies report for the first ever Saints training camp at Cal Western in San Diego. 5 days after that, future NFL Hall of Famer Jim Taylor signs with the Saints. In compensation, since there was no true free agency back then, Commissioner Pete Rozelle has the Saints give up a first-round pick in 1968 to Taylor's old team, the Green Bay Packers. July 8th, veterans report to that first-ever Saints training camp. Then on July 12th, the Saints formally announced their mascot will be a live St. Bernard dog. They hold a fan contest to determine the dog's name, where the winning selection was Gumbo. Then on July 13th, Larry Carl resigns his position over what he told the Times-Picayune was, quote, internal politics, close quote. Many felt Carl was upset that his good friend Bedford Wynn, a public relations man for the Saints who had also come over from the Dallas Cowboys, had been let go a couple of days earlier. On July 15th, the Saints send guard Don Krofcheck to the Chicago Bears in return for future NFL Hall of Famer defensive end Doug Atkins.
They never had a team here. There's no tradition.
And we had some heck of a fans here. They turned out, and we ended up had a pretty good ball team, no pressure on us. We'd short of numbers. Had we had 3 or 4 more numbers of positions, we'd been in good shape. And I really enjoyed my last 3 years of football.
On July 18th, linebacker Steve Stonebreaker changes his mind and formally signs with the Saints after considering retirement. 2 days after that, Bert Rose is officially named Saints general manager. Rose was Commissioner Pete Rozell's assistant during the ownership search for New Orleans' new NFL franchise. And then August 2nd, 1967, the first ever Saints preseason game, a contest which they lose to the Los Angeles Rams in Anaheim 16-7. Before this particular contest, Saints owner John Mecum Jr. met Disneyland Entertainment director Tommy Walker and liked him so much that he hired him on the spot to run the Saints entertainment division and would do so through the 1970 season. Tommy Walker was known for putting together extravagant shows, sometimes spending upwards of $20,000 per game, from marching bands to the famous Rocket Man. With his connections to Disneyland, he brought in entertainers such as Carol Channing, once even getting astronaut Michael Collins, who had recently just come back from the moon. Another memorable halftime show by Tommy Walker was in 1969. He decided to put together an ostrich race, where 3 individuals would be sitting in a surrey connected to an ostrich, where the winner had to cross the opposing goal line 100 yards away first. But one people remember a whole lot, which definitely was not a favorite of Mr. Walker's, was the November 1, 1970 recreation of the Battle of New Orleans at halftime. A cannon misfired and 2 people wound up getting injured in the process. Some people felt this moment is what eventually led Tommy Walker to resign following the 1970 season. Opening day arrived, September 17th, 1967. Let's listen to a little bit of the fanfare from the opening ceremony.
From San Jose State, number 27, Walter Flea Roberts. And at fullback from Louisiana State University.
2 hot air balloons were scheduled to rise from the floor of Tulane Stadium during the pregame festivities, but somehow one of those balloons couldn't quite take off and wound up landing in one corner of Tulane Stadium, to which a member of the media replied, "Hopefully that's not the direction this franchise is going to be starting in." What other folks remember is that exciting opening kickoff by rookie John Gilliam. Here's the call from CBS Television.
New Orleans in white and gold. Gassett's foot is into the bottom. The game is underway, and the New Orleans Saints are now active in regular season play in the National Football League. John Gilliam can take on the field. He's up there on the right. Here's that tremendous speed of John Gilliam. Runs away from the entire
And now here's an interview John Gilliam did about that remarkable play.
Well, first of all, I was almost late getting to the stadium. It was wild. I mean, it's a feeling that it's hard to explain. You know, I walk into the stadium here, it's 80 to 90,000 in Tulane Stadium, a white shirt, bow tie. You know, and I never played before these many people before. And we won the toss, and the ball came to me. I just took the ball and started running. I mean, I was really afraid. Once I saw it open, it was just like, hey, it's over. And once I got past the 40, I just put it in different gear.
The Rams would go on to win the contest 27-13. But they definitely had some memorable names from days gone by in that first season. Let's take a listen to some of them. For example, the great fullback Jimmy Taylor.
Because you have had the experience and been with some good, fine ball players, and you know you're really knowledgeable about the game, and you can help a lot of these young players and work with them, and they're all young and hard-working kids, and they want to learn and want to be good football players, and it does give you an opportunity to bring out some of the leadership qualities in you.
Here's an interesting story from Dave Witzel, who in 1967 had 10 interceptions and was also United Press International Comeback Player of the Year.
I'm lined up on a guy, and I'm hearing this, back up, back up, back up. No, get outside. I'm going, who the hell is this? I'm looking over it like this, trying to see what's going on. And I come off the field. I said to Fierce, who the hell is that assistant? Well, it was a guy that was a friend of Meekham's who he'd given the sideline pass to, and he was in the dress business from Houston.
And wide receiver Danny Abramowitz always had a positive outlook.
I think that if we get a few breaks and if our team morale stays as high as it is, and we do have the potential and ability on this team to go all the way, and I think with a few breaks and a little bit of maybe this woman's luck, we can do it.
And likely one of the greatest characters from that original football team, a gentleman who played center and never missed an offensive snap the first 2 seasons of the Saints, Joe Wendrahosky.
He said, at center, number 54, Joe Wendrahosky was. Man, I came running out there. I felt like I was King Kong, Godzilla. I thought I was 10 foot tall. Man, I thought I was going to yell, oh. If you couldn't play football here in New Orleans with the Saints fans, then you got to go see some doctor, Dr. Zhivago or whoever, or Dr. Spajinski that'll give you a ring job.
One of the more memorable incidents from that first season occurred on October 8th of 67 in Yankee Stadium in a contest against the New York Football Giants. The Saints would lose the contest 27-21. Saints wide receiver Tom Hall ran out of bounds with the football, only to be hit by Giants center Greg Larson. Well, from that point, let's let Stoney tell you the story.
It was well documented that Tommy Hall had been in the hospital for Wednesday, the previous week before the game, because of a cheap shot he took against the Cleveland Browns a week before. So when I went over there just to see if Tom Hall was all right, Larson had to lash out at me verbally, and subsequently I just put him on notice that I would be back.
Quarterback Billy Kilmer also chimes in on the big fight that occurred after the game.
I knew Greg Larson. I came up with Greg, and he was just a mild mannered. He didn't have any animosity in his whole heart. And I remember that he was looking away, and Tommy ran out of bounds, and then Greg turned around and put his arm up real quick. And it looked like he gave him a forearm shiver, but I think Greg told me later on he was trying to protect himself.
Steve Stonebreaker told fans back in 1989 that the worst injury that came out of that Yankee melee was to Danny Abramowitz, not because Danny was hit by anybody, but Danny was running off the field so quickly with his helmet off that he incorrectly gauged the height of the Yankee Stadium dugout roof and wound up cutting his head while trying to make the first step down into the locker room. Commissioner Pete Rozelle fined Stonebreaker $1,000 for the incident. A group of New Orleans businessmen decided to pool their money together to pay Stonebreaker's fine. The commissioner ruled that would be illegal by NFL bylaws. As a result, the men kept the money, and they changed the initial name of their club from the Enforcers Club to the Touchdown Club of New Orleans. Strange irony would be decades later, the club would get permission from the NFL to issue an annual Lifetime Achievement Award in Pete Rozelle's name. The first ever Saints win occurred on November the 5th, 1967 in Tulane Stadium, 31-24. After starting 0-7, Walter Flea Roberts scored 3 touchdowns in the contest, including a 91-yard kickoff return. 2 weeks after the Eagles win, the Saints would play the Eagles again in Philadelphia. On the last play of the first half, Saints at their own 2-yard line, quarterback Billy Kilmer rolls out to the left and throws a pass as far as he can, which Flea Roberts catches at the midfield stripe. He ran down the sideline trying to score a touchdown, but got pushed out of bounds at the other 2-yard line, totaling a 96-yard non-scoring reception, a record that likely may never be broken in Saints history. Wide receiver Danny Abramowitz was about to be cut in training camp when he refused to take his playbook back to the coach's office. Instead, he confronted Coach Fears, stating that Fears broke a promise to him and didn't give him a chance to play in the games. When Fears realized Danny was serious about not leaving, he gave Danny an opportunity to play in the next preseason game on special teams coverage. Well, Danny wound up making the squad as a result of that. The week before that Eagles win, Walter Flea Roberts was scheduled to play against the Pittsburgh Steelers. However, he got called to National Guard duty in Kentucky. As a result, Danny Abramowitz had to fill in at the position, and the rest, as they say, is history. The Saints would go on to win 3 games that year, including their last home game on November 26 against the Atlanta Falcons, 27-24, when the Saints started at their own 3-yard line and drove all the way down the field to score a touchdown, a pass from Billy Kilmer to tight end Kent Kramer with 30 seconds to go. They would also win their last road game of the year at the Washington Redskins, 30-14. Saints offensive tackle Dick Anderson scored the first ever safety in club history when he tackled Redskins return man John Love on a fumbled punt return in the end zone. Just a few days after that 67 campaign ended, on December 23rd, the Associated Press reports that the Saints are wanting Vince Lombardi to be their next head coach and GM. Later, Saints owner John Mecum Jr. flew in Lombardi for an interview, but Lombardi wound up staying out of football in 68 before joining the Redskins in 69. Then on February 16th of 68, Saints officially announced that GM Bert Rose is on a leave of absence. Reports later surfaced that internal friction is leading to Rose being replaced. And on March 29th, the Saints formally announced that Vic Schwenk is the new general manager. And then a bit of controversy occurred after training camp started. On July 17th, San Francisco wide receiver Dave Parks signs with the Saints after playing out his option. Since this was not an era of true free agency, the NFL front office decided what type of compensation the Saints had to give the 49ers. Well, 9 days later, Commissioner Pete Rozelle decided to make an example of the Saints by forcing them to give up their first-round selection from 1968, Kevin Hardy, defensive end from Notre Dame, and their future first-round pick in 1969. Some media outlets reported that Rozelle may have still been bitter with the Saints over the way his good friend Bert Rose had been released by the club. On September 6 of 1968, the Saints were going to play a preseason game in Shreveport, Louisiana against the Vikings. Jimmy Taylor was suiting up for the contest when he decided enough was enough, went back to the hotel room, did not play in the game, and 4 days later on September 10th announced that he was retiring as an NFL player. He would stay employed by the Saints in a front office role through the 1976 season. The Saints' first regular season victory of 1968 was on September 22nd against the Redskins in Tulane Stadium, 31-17. Out of that game probably came the first true special teams coverage star in Saints history, Wild Bill Cody, who was given a game ball for his outstanding performance. Let's listen to his memories of days gone by.
Those first few years, we had probably the best sideshow of any professional football team, with the likes of Al Hurd and his people playing on the sidelines, and probably a little bit of a distraction. You know, were we there to celebrate and party and have fun and make sure the hot dogs didn't get cold and the cold beer didn't get hot, or were we there to play the ball game? You know, I'm not sure we figured that out for a while.
An interesting contest was September 29th against the St. Louis Cardinals in Tulane Stadium. Saints have a 17-0 lead into the third quarter before the Cardinals gradually come back. Then in the fourth quarter, a controversial pass interference penalty is called on Saints defensive back Gene Howard, which gives the Cardinals the ball down at the 1-yard line, and they eventually take the lead off of that 21-20. However, the Saints still had a chance to win the game, but Charlie Durkee's late field goal attempt was blocked. The club would finish 4-9-1 after starting 3-3. And at that 6-game mark, the Saints were actually tied for first place in the Century Division. The Saints' defense improved with 34 sacks on the season. Defensive tackle Dave Rowe would go to the Pro Bowl. Don McCall would lead in rushing with 637 yards, and Danny Abramowitz in receiving with 54 catches. Dave Witzel would lead the team with 6 interceptions. For the first time in club history, the Saints beat a divisional opponent twice in the same season. On October 20th, they beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh 16-12, and on December 15th at Tulane Stadium 24-14. The most noteworthy play in that second win over Pittsburgh came in the second quarter, as second-year player Charlie Brown took a punt 53 yards and ran it back for a touchdown. Along the way to the end zone, 9 Steelers defenders touched him. The 1969 Saints campaign finished with their best record ever at that time at 5-9. However, the season definitely didn't start off very well, and things wouldn't turn around until the Saints had to travel upriver for a contest against the Redbirds. November 2nd, 1969, one day following All Saints Day, the 0-6 New Orleans Saints flew some 600 miles north to Busch Stadium in St. Louis to take on the 2-3-1 Cardinals in 45-degree weather. The Saints were easily on pace to have their worst season ever when the club would turn things around in a manner that even the biggest of diehards were thrown off by. Saints head coach Tom Thiers decided a change in offense was needed, and as a result, wide receiver Dave Parks was moved over to the tight end position, and former defensive back turned wide receiver Al Dodd of Gretna, Louisiana, was put into the starting role. The crowd of 46,718 would in turn witness NFL history as a grand total of 12 touchdown passes were thrown, 6 each by Saints quarterback Billy Kilmer, who had 345 passing yards, and Cardinals quarterback Charlie Johnson with 374. Saints running back Tony Baker added 110 rushing yards, and Al Dodd would have 145 receiving yards. Cornerback Elijah Nevitt had 2 fumble recoveries and an interception. Dave Witzel would have the other INT. One good omen going into the game was for the first time all season, including preseason, the Saints won the opening coin toss. The Saints started off on a 25-yard touchdown pass from Kilmer to Dave Parks in the first quarter. Then the Cardinals came back with 2 touchdown catches by wide receiver Davey Williams, who hadn't caught a TD pass all season prior to this game, to make it 14-7 in the second quarter. The Saints would score the remaining first half points on a Tom Dempsey 43-yard field goal, plus TD catches by fullback Ernie Wheelwright and wide receiver Danny Abramowitz to make it 23-14 Saints at the half.
Kilmer takes a snap, looking back, looking once, throwing to the sideline, hitting Abramowitz, and he's in for the touchdown. Danny Abramowitz on a 5-yard route takes it in for the touchdown, and New Orleans extends its lead.
The third quarter featured Saints running back Don Schei scoring on a 28-yard pass where, ironically, on a previous play, he scored but was called back on a penalty. Ernie Wheelwright scored on the game's only rushing touchdown later in the third to make it 37-14. Then ex-Saints wide receiver John Gilliam comes in to score for the Cardinals on a 28-yard TD pass, but the Saints countered with TD receptions by Abramowitz and Parks to make the early fourth quarter score of 51-21 Saints. Cardinals' Dave Williams came back with 2 more TD receptions and nearly started a fight with Saints defensive back Dave Witzel after the last of those scores, rubbing it in that he scored on him. The Cardinals' Roy Shivers scored the last Cardinals TD on a 14-yard reception, but it was too little too late. The Saints won 51-42. The Cardinals also did themselves in with 10 penalties for 75 yards, but had 2 100-yard receivers in Gilliam and Williams, the second time in Saints history an opponent did so. The Saints set then club game records for first downs with 26, total offensive yards at 508, passing yards, and most points. Billy Kilmer would later be named AP Offensive Player of the Week. An interesting fact from the contest, the Saints actually finished the game with 181 kick return yards. And as for the season, the running game of Andy Livingston and Tony Baker rushed for almost 1,500 yards and was named to the Pro Bowl along with guard Jake Cupp, kicker Tom Dempsey, plus head coach Tom Fears and his staff. The defense also held their own as veteran defensive end Doug Atkins would retire after 17 NFL seasons, the last 3 of which were with New Orleans, and safety Dave Witzel, who had 19 interceptions in his Saints career, would be traded after the season ended. Also in 1969, Danny Abramowitz became the first ever Saints receiver with over 1,000 yards in one season, with 73 catches for 1,015 yards. Another interesting fact from that 69 campaign, the Saints for the first time ever won 3 games in a row, including a November 16th contest at the New York Giants where Tom Dempsey makes 4 field goals, including the final one with 11 seconds left. And on November 23rd in 1969 at Tulane Stadium against the 49ers, 26 seconds left, Ernie Wheelwright scores on a 4-yard touchdown run to seal the first win over San Francisco, 43-38. And now we like to pay tribute to those players of the 1960s, the ones that we thought stood out more than any others at their position for the Saints. Quarterback Billy Kilmer, running backs Andy Livingston and Tony Baker, fullback Tom Barrington, wide receivers Danny Abramowitz and Dave Parks, tight end Ray Pogue, offensive tackles Errol Linden and Jerry Strum, guards Jake Cupp and Dell Williams, center Joe Wentrahowski, defensive ends Doug Atkins and Brian Schweda, defensive tackles Dave Rowe and Mike Tilleman, linebackers Johnny Brewer, Fred Whittingham, Steve Stonebreaker, and Ted Davis. Cornerbacks Elijah Nevitt and Gene Howard. Safeties Dave Witzel and Bo Burris. Kicker Tom Dempsey. Punter Tom McNeil. Return specialist John Gilliam. Special teams coverage Bill Cody. Deep snapper Jackie Burkett. And holder Dave Witzel, who was also very good at blocking field goals and extra points as well. And now we're going to take a Saints timeout. Meaning we're going to look at another aspect of pro football history. In this case, March 19th, 1969. It was officially announced by the NFL New Orleans would host Super Bowl IV. The local committee was led by Al Hurt and George Healy Jr. On January 11, 1970, some 80,562 fans filled Tulane Stadium for the first Super Bowl held in New Orleans. Game number 4 featured the 12-2 Minnesota Vikings with the number 1 offense in the NFL under head coach Bud Grant against Hank Stram's Kansas City Chiefs with a record of 11-3 and the AFL's number 1 defense. The contest would stay in favor of the Chiefs from the get-go.
Hi, I'm Jack Buck. Ed Summerall alongside. Kansas City is the type of team, a physical team, a hitting team that Minnesota has had trouble with throughout the entire year. They expect a tough game.
Kansas City's Jan Stenerud would set a long-standing Super Bowl field goal record of 48 yards and make 3 on the day.
Dawson Holding, Stenerud hit 27 out of 35 this year. Stenerud brings it there, and it's good.
And the city goes out in front, and Dawson did a great job of getting that ball down.
Running back Mike Garrett scored the only touchdown of the first half on a play famously known as
65 toss power trap.
Urbanus is on the left side, and here's Garrett planting in. He ran by Dixon, the extra defensive lineman who was put in there, and went right in from the 5-yard line for the touchdown. That blocked by Mormon. As he gets Page heading for the outside, Dixon can't catch up, and Garrett has great balance.
That's because Hank Stram was the first coach to be microphoned for a Super Bowl, and his excitement about the play was memorable.
Nice going, baby. Yes, sir, Rat. Yes, sir, boy. Yeah! The mentor. 65 toss power try. Yeah! Yeah! I tell you that baby was there. Woo!
The Chiefs sealed the game in the third quarter thanks to this 46-yard touchdown pass play.
Quick snap and the quick pass to Taylor. He got away from McVee. He's inside the 15. He scored from the 47-yard line. Softy missed him. McVee missed him. A touchdown pass to Otis Taylor changes the game around again.
The Chiefs outrushed the Vikings 151 to 67 in yardage, and the Vikings' John Henderson was the only 100-plus yard receiver in the game with 111 yards. The Chiefs' offensive line dominated the Vikings' defensive line in by far one of the huge upsets in pro football history, and showed the AFL was ready to compete on a regular basis with the NFL the following season. After the game, Coach Stram greatly accepted the Super Bowl trophy.
We appreciate this honor greatly, and I assure you that this belongs to our whole squad and our whole organization. It's a great compliment to a great bunch of people, great compliment to Lamar. But we're very happy to be champions of the world, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to maintain the prestige of this great honor.
This win also marked the first time in major pro football history that the championship team had a majority of African American starters. The irony of it all, it occurred 5 years to the date of the African American players' boycott of the AFL All-Star Game. As for the 1970 Saints season, it was just simply full of turmoil. Head coach Tom Fears and general manager Vic Schwenk actually got into a fist fight during the NFL college draft in late January of 1970. Later on, John Meekum decided that Fears would get final say over all personnel decisions. Later that year in early August, Fears was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame for his outstanding years as a wide receiver with the Los Angeles Rams. Ironically, the Saints would play the Vikings in that year's Pro Football Hall of Fame contest. It was a strugglesome year for the Saints, finishing 2-11-1. They didn't have a single running back that would rush for 100 yards in any given game. Injuries also depleted the Saints throughout the roster. In fact, during the season, a couple of players decided to retire, Ernie Wheelwright and Johnny Brewer. It was a season so bad that on November 22nd, in the contest against Denver, Saints defensive back Major Hazelton was penalized 15 yards for a late tripping out of bounds on Denver running back Billy Van Heusen, where in actuality, Van Heusen tripped over Gumbo the mascot and the official was out of position. Tom Fears was fired after the Saints went 1-5-1. A few days earlier, he told the press that he didn't think all of his players was giving 100%. When that statement was made, he basically lost the team from there. After his firing on November 2nd, the Saints announced that J.D. Roberts would become the interim head coach.
When I was asked if I would assume the job the rest of the season, I said yes. I just expected one thing, and that was a wholehearted support of the administration. And as far as being a disciplinarian is concerned, I think anyone in coaching is a disciplinarian. If you don't have discipline, you can't, you might as well not even go out. And as far as I'm concerned, maybe the way I go about it will be different than someone else. But you have to be yourself, and as far as I'm concerned, a team has to be disciplined on the field, off the field, and everything else. And those people who do not like that attitude, don't take that attitude, and they won't be with us.
J.D. had worked with the Saints as a linebackers coach in 1968. He was coaching a minor league team called the Richmond, Virginia Roadrunners, and under 1.5 seasons of Roberts, they were 0-23. November the 8th, J.D.'s first game against the Detroit Lions. The Lions turned the ball over 6 times, with Saints linebacker Jackie Burkett intercepting 2 passes. For all those trivia fans out there, the Saints' only touchdown of the game was scored by Tom Barrington on a play called Red Right 41. The Lions would take the lead with 11 seconds left on a short 18-yard Arrowman field goal before the Saints would gradually come back. And then, as they say, the rest is history. First, here's the call by CBS and Don Criqui.
The Lions 17, the Saints 16. 11 seconds to play. Burrow, 0-0, and Dodd, 25, back for the kickoff. It'll carry short. Dodd at the 14. Running to get out of bounds. He does so with 8 seconds to play. So the Saints, with 8 seconds left and all their timeouts, which are a little important now, really, other than they just need one, will have to try to get in field goal range. Dempsey has hit from, I believe, 55 yards away in a regular season game. 55 yards against the Rams last season. Detroit will be in a prevent defense. They have 5 defensive backs in the game now. Rasmussen way back, along with Uyghur. 8 seconds on the clock. 3 receivers go long for New Orleans. Here's a pass. It's complete. Now it's ruled incomplete. Al Dodd was out of bounds when he caught the ball. Now let's see. Are they going to rule it complete? It's complete. Well, not only will Tom Dempsey hit this one, he's got a very slight wind at his back. He'll set a National Football League record in addition to winning the game. He's tying a 63-yard field goal. I don't believe this. It's good! I don't believe it! The field goal attempt was good from 63 yards away! It's incredible! Tulane Stadium has gone wild! A 63-yard field goal! It is incredible! The Lions are beaten 19-17 on a 63-yard field goal. The old record was 56 yards by Burt Rechtesgar.
And now here's the call over to Saints Radio Network by Al Wester.
And if you believe in miracles, my friends, it'll take something like that to help us now. Here is man to kick off. Al Dodd to the 20, to the 25, and out of bounds at the 28-yard line on the run back. 8 seconds remain on the clock. Kilmer with the snap. Back in the pocket to throw. He looks. He throws. It is caught. And out of bounds at the 45-yard line. There's still 2 seconds remaining.
Will try to kick the longest field goal in National League history. They're sending him on with 2 seconds left. Scarpetti will hold. Holy daylight, I've seen them all, but this is the most exciting moment in Saint history. Scarpetti will hold at the Saint 38-yard line, and Dempsey will try the longest kick he's ever attempted. 2 seconds left. Here's a snap. The ball is down. Dempsey kicks. It's on the way. It is.
Now here's a couple of interviews of Dempsey right after the game.
Yeah, what did Scarpetti say?
Nothing really. He just he said back up a little bit farther. You know, he said we're back and just kick the hell out of it.
How did it feel?
Well, I don't know yet, Jim. Tell you the truth, I'm still kind of riding the cloud. I'd like to think about this one for a while.
You didn't talk it over with the coach. There were 2 seconds left, and he just said go in, huh?
Well, Coach Heinrich said the only chance we got is to kick it, and the coach said go out and kick it. So we went out and tried.
Did you have confidence that you could hit that far?
Well, I had confidence I could kick the ball 62 yards, but I was wondering thing in my mind is whether I could kick it straight 62 or 63 yards, whatever it was.
What were your thoughts while you were waiting on that one?
Just to kick it as hard as I could.
Just to kick the heck out of it.
Yeah, and just hope that it stayed straight.
And for the record, the holder was Joe Scarpati, the deep snapper Jackie Burkett, and the men who blocked up front, Bill Cody, Willie Towns, Dave Rowe, Wayne Coleman, Dave Long, Errol Linden, Mike Taylor, and Jake Cupp. And on December 28th of 1970, the Saints signed J.D. Roberts to a 2-year contract extension. Story goes, according to Buddy Diliberto, longtime sportscaster in New Orleans television, that owner John Meekum stated that J.D. Roberts could be the next Vince Lombardi. The following 2 seasons would somewhat disagree with that comment. On January 23, 1971, the Saints traded away quarterback Billy Kilmer to the Washington Redskins in return for the Redskins' 4th and 8th round selections in 1972, plus linebacker Tom Russell, a native of Thibodaux. The trade was made over personal issues between Kilmer and owner John Meekum. 5 days after that, the college draft was held, with the Saints selecting Archie Manning with the 2nd overall pick in the 1st round.
Certainly a pleasure for me to be a part of the Saints organization.
The Saints would go on to a 4-8-2 record in 1971. Archie made an immediate impact on opening day, September 19, 1971, at home versus the Rams, 24-20.
This play decides the game. Manning sprinting out. Manning is in for the touch. He fumbles the ball. No, he is in for the touchdown. As soon as he touched down, the ball was dead. Boy, that's a display of guts football. I stand here and I salute J.D. Roberts of the New Orleans Saints. That takes guts. That takes a lot of courage to do that. There's 26 teams in the National Football League, and I ask you how many coaches would go for that play when they have a chance to tie the Los Angeles Rams with 3 seconds left. On the last play of the game, they go for a win, and they get it.
Here's Archie Manning looking back at that first game.
Kind of a sad state, too. 14-year career's over to go back and pick out your highlights, and your first game might have been your highlight or one of your best games.
October 17th, the Saints upset Dallas 24-14 thanks to Manning, plus several key returns and turnovers by special team players like Dallas Howell and Dave Kopay. And here's J.D. Roberts on that Cowboys contest.
Tom Landry did us a pretty big favor anyway. Instead of starting Staubach, he started Craig Morton. We were delighted when that happened. We felt like we had some kind of a chance because the way we could get to them was to blitz, and it worked out for us, and we were able to take a 17-0 lead into the late in the third quarter, and then Tom Landry decides to play Staubach, which was to our demise because it didn't take him long to get 14 points on the board. So now it's 17-14. We have to make an 82-yard drive to ice the game, and Archie did it.
Manning would be sacked 40 times in his rookie season, and Archie wound up missing half the games that year due to injury, and Ed Hargett would replace him. In the November 14th contest at San Francisco, Virgil Robinson would catch the winning touchdown pass with less than 2 minutes to go. Later, a Hugo House interception would seal the victory. 2 weeks later versus Green Bay in Milwaukee, 5 Charlie Durkee field goals and a Doug Wyatt interception late would seal the victory there, 29-21. On December the 10th, General Manager Vic Schwenk is relieved of his duties when he confronted owner John Meekum about the rumors that Meekum was looking for a new front office man. 9 days later, the Saints would close out their regular season 24-20 in a loss to the Atlanta Falcons. They would lose with 40 seconds left on a Falcons pass from quarterback Bob Berry to receiver Ken Burrow. Here's another Saints timeout. In the spring of 1971, the folks at Tulane decided to have a fundraiser in order to get brand new artificial turf for their stadium in the hopes of luring Super Bowl VI to New Orleans. When that initial fundraiser came up a bit short, they came up with another concept. It was called Turf Telethon, where New Orleans native and Hollywood actor Ed Nelson hosted a telethon that was simulcasted on 3 New Orleans television stations late on a Sunday night, and fortunately enough money was raised to complete the purchase of the turf, and Super Bowl VI was awarded to New Orleans. On January 16, 1972, New Orleans hosted one of the coldest Super Bowls for a southern climate, as game number 6 featured the Miami Dolphins under head coach Don Shula against Tom Landry's Dallas Cowboys with a kickoff temperature of 41 degrees before 81,023 fans. Dallas kept a steady hand in the contest and set Super Bowl records at the time of 252 rushing yards, 23 first downs, and to this day remain the only team to prevent their opponent from scoring a touchdown in the big game. The Cowboys would score 3 touchdowns in their 24-3 victory.
Garrison is to the left of Staubach. Hill to the right. Touchdown, Allworth. Fantastic move by Lance Allworth to keep his feet in bounds. He was well covered by Curtis Johnson. Ditka's on the left. Truax is on the right. Dwayne Thomas. Touchdown. Nick Bonaconte had a crack at him, but Thomas just sort of shredded him off. 3rd and 4. This is Howley, the linebacker. 30, 20, 15, 12-yard line, Chuck Howley.
Remember, he was the most valuable player in last year's Super Bowl when he intercepted 2 Baltimore Colt passes. He returned that one 40 yards.
On 3rd and goal, Staubach. Touchdown, Mike Ditka.
The Dolphins had a blitz going again as Bonaconte blew up the middle, but Staubach was able to pick up his tight end.
The most memorable post-game moment was in the victorious Cowboys locker room, when CBS's Tom Brookshire interviewed running back Dwayne Thomas, who was known for not speaking much to the media, and by his side was Hall of Famer Jim Brown.
Dwayne, you do things with speed, but you never hurry. A lot like the great Jim Brown. You still outrun people. Are you that fast? Are you that quick, would you say?
Evidently.
Dwayne, if you like football, you must like this game, because they tell me in practice you run further than anybody else with the ball and all.
Yeah, I do. That's why I went off in pro ball, you know. That's why I am a football player, so that's why I have to live with it.
I think his silence have enabled him to do this, I think, because there was no controversy involved. There was no conflict with his teammates or his coaches. Right. And I think he should be commended for this. but I don't think he wants to say anymore at this particular time. But I think he did want the American public to know that he is a football player and that he did want to win the Super Bowl.
Dwayne, thank you very much, and I appreciate it. Here, Dwayne Thomas, one of the great running backs, and we're glad it was done here. He broke the silence.
Cowboys quarterback Roger Staubach was Super Bowl VI MVP, and the game was not shown live in New Orleans because of a then NFL policy, even though the game did sell out more than 72 hours before kickoff. It was shown on tape delay at 10:30 p.m. that night. The policy was modified starting with the 1973 season. The 1972 Saints calendar started on an interesting note. It was January the 7th. John Mecum Jr., owner, announces that retired NASA astronaut Captain Richard Gordon would be the new head of the front office. Mecum and Gordon had been friends for a few years after they first met on a flight from Washington to Houston, and Mecum admitted for some time he was pondering whether or not to hire Gordon to work for one of the Mecum enterprises. Here's that announcement.
Today I'd like to make the announcement that retired Captain Richard Gordon has now become a member of the Saints family and to head up the Saints family in the new capacity of Executive Vice President. We've decided to do away with the title General Manager. I think the times have changed, the duties have changed, and I think it's really a misnomer with the organizational setup that we presently have and with the present setups that are going on or that are being carried out throughout professional football. It's time to make a break with tradition again, and I think the Saints, with the staff that we presently have in the front office and with the setup that we have out of David Drive, that we're on our way to becoming a contender, but most definitely being a professional football franchise that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Here are some interesting comments made by Captain Gordon when first asked about the possibility of becoming Saints front office head.
Well, have you any football background or knowledge at all?
No, just other than the fact I'm a very interested fan and I enjoy the game and I really love it. I think it's a great sport.
Of course, like John says, it's past being a sport in a lot of respects now. He says he thinks that a non-football man can handle the job because of the business aspects of it. Now, do you have, like, business background?
Well, no, I think that particular aspect, as far as I'm concerned, it deals with people, and that's what makes this sort of thing go. And I think people is the greatest thing about it, whether it's business or balance sheets. John has a great staff down there, and they can take care of the details of that. And there's a lot of human relationships that are involved in this type of activity. There certainly is.
The Saints would go 2-11-1 in 1972 as a healthy Archie Manning didn't miss an offensive snap. The club simply struggled throughout the season. Manning was sacked some 43 times. Joe Owens at defensive end sacked opposing quarterbacks 9 times. The Saints would play their first ever Monday night game versus the Chiefs on September 25th in a 20-17 loss thanks to a late Jan Sternerud field goal. The Saints' only 2 wins were against the Eagles on October 29th by a margin of 21-3 and to the Rams on November 26th thanks to a last-second Happy Feller field goal, 19-16.
For those of you just joining the broadcast, Julian Fagan punted 71 yards to put the Rams at bay. The Saints held the Rams, and then when the Rams tried to punt back, the punt got shanked, and New Orleans got great field position where they drove down to the 26-yard line. Ed Hargett will hold. I think the Tulane Stadium crowd will tell you whether or not Happy Feller makes this kick. There's the snap. The boot is up. It is on the way, and it is good. The New Orleans Saints have just defeated the Rams in exciting fashion. The whole bench is emptied, and they're hugging Happy Feller. I don't think he's been this happy since he kicked the winning extra point in 1969 for the University of Texas over Arkansas.
On December 3rd of 72, the Saints played at the New York Jets. The Saints would lose 18-17. It was the first time in Saints history that an opponent defeated them without scoring a touchdown. However, the game was not televised back in New Orleans or any part of the country, and that's because of a CBS technician strike. When CBS tried to bring in replacement technicians, the striking technicians threatened violence against the replacements, so as a result, no television. And finally, a very interesting factoid on December 17, 1972. The Saints close out their season losing at home to Green Bay 30-20. In the contest, the Saints blocked 2 field goals and 2 punts. But one of the punts had a very interesting reason for being blocked. While Saints defensive end Richard Neal was given credit, in reality the punter had stepped too far forward when he kicked the ball and actually kicked it into the rear end of his blocking up man. Richard Neal was right there and fell on it for a touchdown. And that's the story of 1972, no ifs, ands, or buts.